I'm going to go on a rant right now about what history means. Today, we are in what, this is, by the way, source context. This is from the Oxford Annotated Bible with Apocrypha. And so what this source does is it takes the New Living Translation of the Bible, which is what is considered by academics the closest literal translation that we have of the Bible to its source texts, right? Not translated in a way with any other agenda, like some other versions. It is, what did the manuscript say? Here's what it is, as closely as we can get it from its original source. That's what I like. And then you get your footnotes and your introductions and your commentary essays that go along with it from different theologians and scholars who have done research on this and also cite their sources copiously, which I appreciate. And so, as I have concluded, the Pentateuch, which is the first couple books of the Bible that are attributed to Moses, even though Moses narrates his own death in the book of Deuteronomy, which, how could that have happened? It didn't. You get into the next couple books, which are called the historical books, except the idea of history means something different to us today than it did to them. And the only reason this makes me upset is that I was taught to put my definition of history onto their definition of history, which means that I have canceled out their definition of history, which then kind of clouded the way that I was interpreting it from the beginning. These books are not linear history. They're not. They're more of a cultural history. The idea pre-modern European history, pre-concept of modern European history, which is such and such happened at this time, at this date. This is exactly what happened. More objective ideas, right? Our ideal history, where there's no narrative kind of bending any truths. That was not the thing. That was not the thing. The whole point of history at the time was a cultural history. It was, this is why we do what we do. Here's a story that tells you why and validates it and justifies it, even though historically, timeline-wise, it did not happen that way. Even though that, for example, when Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho, it was not exactly like that. Archaeological evidence shows it. And honestly, if you go back and you would talk to people about it, they'd say, yeah, it was never meant to be interpreted literally. It was for our cultural reference to help us understand what we should believe, what we should do, even though some of it infused linear timeline history into it to help it feel stronger. It was never with the agenda of recording events. It was recording cultural meaning. And that's fine, right? That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm really not, but I can be okay with that. I'm going to learn to be okay with that because it is fine, right? It's only how I feel about it that there's a problem. And the reason that I feel so not great about it is because from a young age, like many of us were, I was told this is exactly what happened and you have to believe it exactly that way, even though some of it doesn't make sense. And even though some of it's going to make you feel like, what even were those 10 commandments if we're going over here and just murdering entire cities? It doesn't make sense, right? And it's not supposed to, not in the way that we're trying to make it make sense. So when you are reading, let's use the Bible as the example here, right? The historical books, that's what they're called, are not linear history, timeline history. That's not what they were written for. That was not what was in the heads of the people who were writing it, who were not, by the way, Moses and some of the people attributed to writing it. That's a whole different rant I can get into later once I've educated myself better. What we are reading is the cultural history. It's kind of like a mythology. And that's okay. It's totally fine that this is the story they chose to pass down to give themselves pride, understanding, and a deeper knowledge of what is meaningful to them. Every culture has it, right? Every culture has it. It's the lore, right? We don't have to call it history. It's the lore. The problem that I have is that this book in particular has been gripped so tightly by a particular section of humanity, going to say it, the fundamentalist Christians, and the type of belief systems I myself was raised in. They've gripped it so tightly that they have made it mean something that it was never meant to mean, and therefore the book now has a harder time being heard for what it is. And therefore, anything of value in there has a harder time being used for the value that it has, because we've given it so much pressure to be something. And can millennials relate to this? We've given it so much pressure to be something that it isn't, that now it's just falling apart. So I hope that, I'm going to round myself out here because we're coming to the end of the live. But I hope that when we go through, if you feel like it is safe and time for you to go back and read the Bible, that you read it with the same kind of open mind that you would read the Odyssey or the Iliad, because those things are not technically historical either, even though they do cite historical things. There is liberties taken for the cultural preservation and explanation of important things to the culture for which it was speaking to. Samesies. And yes, I probably have more education to have in this situation. If you have resources you would like to guide me to, I am open to those. I love it. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I'm saying I've discovered this thing based on resources, and I would like to share it with you, because if I'm at this step in the journey and maybe you're right there with me, now you have that step in the journey too. That is what I would like to do with these rants, which I plan on doing more often. And I like doing them on the lives because I have you guys right here as a living audience, which is more fun for me. So what do you think of that one?